of the COVID-19 vaccines. Amid another round of fuel price increases, the government will release 1 billion pesos to assist thousands of public utility vehicle drivers. And a presidential aspirant remains hopeful that Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte will run and take his place by next month, while a senator seeks to change rules on the substitution policy. The Health Department has approved the recommended booster and additional shots of COVID-19 vaccines for selected groups. What does that mean, and how soon can the government start giving these extra doses? Caroline Bonkin gives us an update.
Dialysis patient Reynaldo Abacan Jr. is looking forward to receiving an additional COVID-19 vaccine dose. It has protected most of his friends who are also battling kidney disease.
Marami pong nagkaroon ng COVID na hindi na po siya yung severe. So, mas maganda po siguro kung darating pa yung pangatlong dose dahil nakita po namin yung effectiveness ng bakuna.
The World Health Organization recently recommended an additional COVID dose for the immunocompromised like Reynaldo, after discovering that not all of them got enough protection from the vaccine. In the Philippines, the Health Secretary approved the recommendation of the Health Technology Assessment Council or HTAC. It suggests booster shot be given at least 6 months after being fully vaccinated to health workers and senior citizens at the fourth quarter of the year, depending on supply and vaccine coverage. Those under the A1 to A5 groups will get the booster shot next year if half of the target priority group already got primary series or the initial recommended doses. For identified hotspot areas, 70% of the target population should be vaccinated. For people with compromised immune system, they'll get an additional dose 28 days after the primary doses beginning this year. Here's the initial list of illnesses qualified for the additional shot. HTAC recommends the same brand as booster, but Pfizer is recommended for those who had AstraZeneca, Sinovac, and Moderna. Those vaccinated with Sinovac may also have AstraZeneca as booster, but this doesn't mean the government can already give extra doses. Health officials still await complete guidelines from the WHO. Pfizer is recommended for those who had AstraZeneca,
healthcare workers. Kami yung mga sundalo ngayon sa gitna ng pandemya.
Meanwhile, Reynaldo is asking for more vaccines for the immunocompromised in the provinces.
Sila po yung mga minsan nabibiktima pa ng COVID at nauwi sa severe at nakakalungkot man po paano sila. So sana po mabigyan agad sila ng bakuna bago sana ma-release yung pangatlo. So para sabay-sabay po kaming magkaroon ng pangatlong bakuna at maprotektahan. Mahina po yung katawan namin, so hindi na normal. So ganun po kahalaga yung bakuna sa amin.
Caroline Bonkin, CNN Philippines.
The debate goes on whether or not employers have the option to ask their unvaccinated workers not to report for work. The labor chief says this can be justified through the IATF's guidelines and alert level systems, but some labor and employers group says this is discriminatory and could worsen the unemployment situation. Our Tristan Nadalo files this report.
The Labor Department's position justifying the no vaccine, no work policy is demoralizing for workers according to the Trade Union Congress of the Philippines.
Maraming mga manggagawa sa ngayon ang hindi pa bakunado, kung kaya magre-resulta sa maraming mga unemployment, maraming mga underemployment, marami sa mga manggagawa ang kasalukuyang demoralized sa mga ganitong pahayag.
A group of employers also warns of possible discrimination against unvaccinated workers.
Po naman discriminatory yun because there is no law that says that you can only hire vaccinated people, no? But there is no way that Tole can impose that.
While many salon and restaurant employees have been vaccinated, some don't have the same access to COVID-19 doses. But for now, businesses have to comply with the IATF requirements so they can operate.
Protection din sa mga customer namin na para hindi sila mag-doubt na matakot. Siyempre, vaccinated kaming lahat.
Yung isang tao nabigyan na po ng first dose, so nag-umpisa na siya mag-work. Ngayon, ang tanong ko naman, di muna siya pwedeng mag-work muna. So, i-stop muna yung work kahit mayroon na siyang first dose.
Over the weekend, Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello maintained the IATF's position that employers cannot prohibit unvaccinated workers to report for work, but he insists vaccination status is not a legal ground for termination.
Yung restaurant, hotels, barbershop, spas, and yung other wellness business. Doon lang hindi pwedeng papasukin yung mga nagtatrabaho dyan dahil the IATF resolution provides that you can only operate if yung mga empleyado mo ay vaksinado.
The Justice Department, on the other hand, says that employers cannot compel their workers to get vaccinated in the absence of a law. Meantime, a group of restaurant owners support the IATF decision to require fully vaccinated workers in establishments for public safety. They also offer options employers can take for the unvaccinated.
To give them alternate work assignments. So maybe they can work in delivery or office muna. But for those that require face-to-face engagement with guests, we very much support IATF instruction to have only vaccinated staff during alert level 3.
Both business owners and the Labor Department say this could only be temporary and the policy could soon change under a lower alert level. Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines.
The Health Department says there is a clear breach of safety protocols when thousands of people visited the so-called Dolomite Beach in Manila over the weekend. The DOH points out the public is not entirely to blame. It says local and national government agencies should follow safety protocols or the gains in the COVID-19 fight will have gone to waste.
Sinabi kapag ka-alert level 3, ang outdoors natin 50% capacity. Yung nakita po natin nung weekend, hindi po yung 50% capacity. Kapag ka nakikita natin na crowded na, may gathering na, hindi na dapat natin pinupuntahan. At ang ating mga ahensya, may responsibilidad kayo to prevent these mass gatherings. Kasi kung ganito lang po ang mangyayari sa atin, babalik po tayo dun sa dati nating paghihigpit. At ayaw po natin lahat yan.
The Environment Department says it will implement a 15-minute time limit among visitors, adding that it will be one of the agency's remedial measures to accommodate more people. The DNR will also close the area once a week for maintenance. Malacanang, meanwhile, reminds the public only those 18 to 65 years old are allowed outdoors. Those outside the age group can leave home only for essential trips and not for leisure activities. The Manila government says it is still working on clear guidelines for kids at the Dolomite Beach.
Actually, in the works pa rin po yan. Si Yorme po ay tinitingnan po kasi niya kung ano po ang... Kasi before po, sinabi po ni Ben-Hur Abalos po, ni Sir Ben-Hur Abalos, na po pwede na po basta kasama yung mga magulang. Pero last week din binawi po nila. So we have to make adjustments din po kung ano po ang talagang po pwede.
The Manila Police District has been ordered to deploy more personnel to make sure health protocols are observed and prevent possible super spreader events from happening. The Health Department confirming the presence of another COVID-19 variant in the country. The B11318 variant was found in the sample of a man who arrived from the United Arab Emirates on March 5th. He recovered on March 21st. The variant was detected through retroactive genome sequencing following efforts to trace the earliest cases of the highly infectious Delta variant.
It has 14 mutations in its spike region. Kasama po dito yung mga mutations na nakita rin natin sa Delta variant at sa Beta variant. Pinag-aaralan po ito maigi ng WHO, ng mga international experts, dahil ito pong mga mutations na ito ay maaari maka-apekto rin sa ating efficacy ng bakuna, maaari rin po makapag-apekto sa transmission ng sakit. It's a variant under monitoring. Lahat po pinag-aaralan sa ngayon. Wala po tayong cause to panic.
World Health Organization classified B11318 as a variant under monitoring in June, but it was first detected in January. Now, the Center for Health Development Calabarzon denies it bought overpriced ambulances. CHD Calabarzon Director Eduardo Hanaido says they complied with the requirements of the procurement law and were not flagged by the Commission on Audit during their annual review. Hanaido says the 98 ambulances with their components were bidded out as a package and not separately. The winning bid for each ambulance with 30 components was at 2.298 million pesos. This is lower than the allocated 2.5 million peso budget. Hanaido also clarifies that the overpriced amount presented by Senator Ping Lacson during a Senate hearing was taken from their 2019 land ambulance market study. Since the ambulances and components were bid as a package, there is no amount specified for each component. But the chief says they recently asked for the price for each component from the winning bidder to supposedly check the veracity of Lacson's presentation. Senator Lacson earlier alleged that all 841 ambulances bought by the health department since 2019 were overpriced by 1 million pesos each. He claimed the government lost 841 million pesos to these procurements. Coming up on Newsnight, a welcome relief for public utility vehicle drivers, even as pump prices go up again tomorrow. And PDP Laban Standard Bearer Senator Bato de la Rosa meets with Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte about the deadline for substitution of candidates. Details next here on CNN Philippines.
Oh, anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, no? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
Quincentenary Faith Rewind.
Ferdinand Magellan died in the hands of Dato Lapu-Lapu in the Battle of Mactan. Spanish navigator Juan Sebastian Elcano took command of the voyage, which finally reached the Spice Islands. To date, the expedition is also known as Magellan-Elcano Expedition.
KBP marks 500 years of Christianity and this station.
Oh, anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, no? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
Next KD 1053 kHz.
Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. The government greenlights cash aid for public utility vehicle drivers amid soaring fuel prices. The government will release 1 billion pesos in cash grants for nearly 180,000 recipients. This will be distributed through the Pantawid de Pasada program of the LTFRB. A number of transport groups earlier appealed for a 2 to 3 peso fare hike, including Pasang Mazda, whose president I spoke to on News.ph last week. Group President Obet Martin said Pasang Mazda will withdraw its petition if the government grants cash subsidy and allows jeepneys to operate at full capacity.
Sa mga traditional at modern jeepneys, 50% lang po ang pwede natin isakay. Kanya sabi ko nga, total naman level 3 na tayo at magle-level 2 pa. Gawin na namin, nire-request na namin na gawin natin 100% ang aming capacity para kumita rin po ang ating mga jeepney drivers. Anya pa rin po yung tinatawag yung ating pong mga plastic barrier at ang ating pong mga passengers ng PI, obligado po magsuot ng face mask at face shield. Kanya, yun naman po para sa kabutihan ng ating lahat ng mananakay. Kabutihan din po ng driver na may dalang sasakyan.
Pump prices will rise tomorrow for the 9th consecutive week. Caltex, Clean Fuel, Petrogas, Phoenix Petroleum, PTT Philippines, Sea Oil, Petron, Unioil, and Total will raise gasoline prices by 1 peso and 15 centavos per liter. The same companies will raise diesel prices by 45 centavos per liter. Meanwhile, Caltex, Petron, and Sea Oil will jack up kerosene prices by 55 centavos a liter. The Metro Rail Transit or MRT Line 7 adds more trains for use on its tracks. Builder and operator San Miguel Corporation says workers mounted 2 additional Hyundai Rotem train sets between University Avenue and Tandangsora in Quezon City. SMC President and CEO Ramon Ang says the company targets operations by the end of 2022. San Miguel expects to install 6 of the total 36 Korean train sets before the year ends. Once operational, MRT 7 will allow travel time from Quezon City City to Bulacan in just 35 minutes. 90 public schools will participate in the pilot run of face-to-face classes beginning November 15th. The Education Department says the schools are from 12 regions, broken down into 14 in Caraga, 10 each in Ilocos, Central Luzon, and Eastern Visayas, and 8 each in Central Visayas, Zamboanga Peninsula, and Davao. The remaining 5 are in Calabarzon. DepEd says assessments are ongoing as it aims to get 100 public and 20 private schools in total to join the pilot run.
Yung face-to-face na ini-envision natin, iba sa face-to-face na nakasanayan natin. Na halimbawa, 5 days a week and how many hours a day kaharap ng mga estudyante and teachers. This will only be on specified hours in specified places. At saka, kung mayroong mga developments na bigla na hindi natin inasahan, ay talagang siyempre ititigil ka agad yan.
The Education Department reiterates that students must have parental consent. Local governments, parents, and school personnel must also be oriented properly. A lawmaker is joining calls to limit substitution of aspirants ahead of Election Day. Senator Win Gatchalian has filed a measure seeking to amend the Omnibus Election Code, which allows the replacement of candidates in the case of death, disqualification, or withdrawal of candidacy. Instead of withdrawal, Gatchalian says substitution should only be allowed for aspirants who become incapacitated. He explains this is to level the playing field among candidates and attain a more institutionalized system. House Deputy Speaker Rufus Rodriguez also filed a bill seeking to ban substitution. Gatchalian's move comes amid calls for Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte to run for president as a substitute bet. He earlier offered to be her vice presidential running mate. A presidential aspirant is still hopeful Mayor Sara will run and take his place before the substitution period ends. Speaking to CNN Philippines, PDP Laban standard bearer and Senator Bato de la Rosa admitted he reminded Mayor Sara about the November 15 substitution deadline during their meeting this morning. He did not disclose other details. De la Rosa says he had a, quote, serious discussion with Mayor Sara and believes it yielded a positive outcome.
Siya na mag-announce, siya na just wait for her, siya na bahala mag-sabi kung anong final niya. So nabago ko ba yung isip niya o hindi?
In a Facebook post, Mayor Sara Duterte thanked De La Rosa for his, quote, advice and words of wisdom. De La Rosa has repeatedly said he would give way if she decides to run for the top post. But the presidential daughter has been firm she will only seek re-election in Davao City next year. Now, over the weekend, Mayor Sara Duterte also met with another presidential aspirant, former Senator Bongbong Marcos. She says they discussed how her regional party, Hukbo ng Pagbabago, can help him in his bid for the presidency. Now, what exactly did De La Rosa and Mayor Sara talk about? We go above and beyond the headlines with the Senator himself. Join us on the phone, Senator Bato de la Rosa. Sir, good evening and welcome to Newsnight. Sir, can you tell us, ang quote po sa inyo baka magbago pa isip niya. Is that correct, sir? You said that? Baka magbago pa isip niya?
Yes, Pia.
Yes, well, if you said that, sir, so that means she really, and I suppose this is what she told you because you said baka magbago pa isip niya. That means she told you that she still does want to run for a third term as Davao Mayor. Is that correct, sir?
As of now, yun ang status niya, no? Tumatakbo siya bilang mayor ng Davao City for her third term. But yun nga, hindi pa naman, all the options are left on the table for her taking hanggang November 15.
What did you tell her, Senator Bato, to try and convince her to run for president instead of for mayor of Davao City for a third time?
Basta, yung usapan kaya medyo humaba at basta we had a lengthy and very serious discussion. Yung aming ginawa kanina and nangyari kasi yun dahil nga this was we scheduled this long before pa nagka-COVID siya. Nung nagka-COVID siya, nag-text kami na lalabas siya from quarantine by Friday. Di sabi niya, pwede na tayo mag-usap sa Sabado, sir. Sabado tayo mag-usap. Then, nag-text na naman siya uli na may emergency siya na biyahe sa Cebu. So, i-move na lang namin yung aming meeting sa Monday. So, nangyari nga itong Monday na ito, kaninang umaga. So, yun, nag-usap kami. I just reminded her na November 15 is fast approaching.
Okay. Well, apart from that, sir, ano pa po ba yung sinabi nyo para ma-convince na nga siya, di ba? I mean, when you're trying to convince someone, kailangan meron kayong really, really strong argument that will really convince this person na tama talaga yung gusto yung gawin niya.
Well,
like, what is it that you told her na you need to run for president because what?
Itong usapan na ito is already, sabi ko, itong sitwasyon is beyond Davao City, beyond Duterte family, but this is already for national interest. Bansa na pinag-uusapan dito, so alam kong relaxing ka na dyan sa pagka-mayor, pero still, majority pa rin ng Filipino people ay gusto ikaw ay tumakbo. Yung nga, sabi kaya, yung nasa ilalim ng survey ay gusto pa rin tumakbo. Ikaw na nasa pinakataas ka ng survey, ang laki na agwat mo, ayaw mong tumakbo. That's simple, ganun lang ng mga reminders.
Okay. But Senator, when you say for the national interest, what exactly did you mean? Because you said this is beyond the Duterte family. So, for the national interest, meaning what? Are you saying that our country will only prosper, will only develop if Sara Duterte is president? Ano po yung ibig yung sabihin ng national interest?
National interest, Pia, meaning maganda na yung takbo ng 6 years ng Duterte administration and for continuity purposes. For continuity purposes, another 6 years of Duterte branch of leadership. Then, tuloy-tuloy na yung takbo ng ating gobyerno ng gano'n, gaganda yung ating bansa. Kasi 6 years is not enough.
Okay. Sir, nabanggit... Oo. Sir, nabanggit nyo ba yung ICC probe? Yes or no, sir? Yes or no lang?
Hindi na pinag-usapan.
Okay. Sir, if it is, since you're saying na siya dapat magpresidente, paano ngayon si BBM? Paano ngayon si Bongbong Marcos? Because he wants to run for president. So are you saying that it's going to be a Sara BBM ticket or Sara and Bongo versus Bongbong Marcos and his running mate? Ano po yung naiisip niyong setup, yung mga team-ups po, sir?
Wala pa namang final talaga hanggang November 16. Baka nga, mamaya ako pa ang nandyan. Ako pa ang tuloy-tuloy nito sa akin kung ayaw talaga niya. Kaya nga, the situation is so fluid. Hintayin na lang natin hanggang November 15 ano mangyari dito.
Kasi if it is going to be like you said, you want her to run for president, so paano naman si Bongbong? And yet they met over the weekend in Cebu, and her statement to the media is that I told, and paraphrasing, she told Bongbong Marcos that Hugpong will support Bongbong's bid for the presidency. So we're trying to make sense of all of this that's going on, because you're saying you want her to run for president. So syempre, is it a Sara Bongo or a Sara BBM or a BBM Sara?
As I've said, lahat naman yan mapag-uusapan. Mapag-uusapan niya lahat. Walang problema sa amin. Manalo si Bongbong Marcos, wala rin. Kaibigan rin namin yan. Wala mang problema. So, hindi po mahirap yan. Hindi mahirap mag-adjust. Sa akin lang, I am just true to my word na at the very start, I said na tumakbo ako both as a principal or as a supernumerary for Inday Sara. I have been consistent with that ever since. So, niremind ko lang siya na November 15 is fast approaching. So, kung gusto niya magbago ng desisyon, then, sana magbago yung desisyon niya. Pero kung hindi, wala tayong magawa. Pero,
Alright, Senator Bato de la Rosa. Sir, thank you. Yes.
Salamat.
Yeah, go ahead, sir. Hindi kayo ano po yon, sir?
Hindi ko na kailangan i-discuss pa yung detalye ng usapan natin. Basta, yun na lang masasabi ko sa'yo. Mahirap na.
Sige po.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat po, Senator Bato de la Rosa, speaking to us by phone. Thank you, sir. Figures around the globe praise the world champion gymnast Carlos Yulo for making history yet again. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines.
Kini ang RPN Dex Kini Radio Runda 1053 kHz.
Oh, anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, no? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
Quincentenary Faith Rewind.
The image of Santo Niño may have come from Michelin Flanders, now part of Belgium. There are surviving images that resemble the one in Cebu from 16th century Flanders. King Charles I of Spain grew in Flanders and must have obtained and given images of the Santo Niño for the expedition.
KBP marks 500 years of Christianity and this station.
DXKD Ronda Balita. Mga balitang may kamatuuran, way gidapigan o hilisgutanan sa katawhan. DXKD Ronda Balita. Mga labas nga mga balita gikan sa sinaligang mga tinugdagan. Balitang hinimo sa lawak balitaanan. Diin inyong madungog ang mga balitang lokal, regional, national o international o uban pang may kalabutan sa atong kadiliman. Gihatod kaninyo live gikan sa RPN DXKD Radio Ronda Broadcast Center. DXKD Ronda Balita. Inyong madungog matag adlang Lunes hangtod Biyernes alas 12 hangtod sa alas 2 sa kahaponon ug makita usab sa RPN DXKD Dipolog Facebook page, YouTube ug sa Twitter. DXKD Ronda Balita.
RPN Dex Kini Radio Runda 1053 kHz.
Philippines prominent personalities in both sports and government have put a spotlight on gymnast Carlos Yulo's historic victory, multiple medals at the Artistic Gymnastics World Championships. Yulo is the first Filipino to achieve the feat, taking gold in the men's vault and silver in the parallel bars. The Olympics posted about the double win, recognizing Yulo's redemptive feat after falling short of a medal at the Tokyo competition. The Japanese ambassador to the Philippines also congratulated the 21-year-old and tweeted that Yulo's dedication is sure to lead him to more success. Yulo shared that even after winning at the vault final, the next event was already on his mind.
When I knew that I won the gold medal in vault, I was really happy at the moment, but at the same time, I'm kind of focusing on P-bar's routine, and I think it did go well. I was sure want to go easy, and I want to move forward and make myself the best version of myself.
We have 61 days before Christmas, and that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pio Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you.
Kini ang RPN Dexki Radio Runda 1053 kHz.
O, anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, no? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
Honorable Angel Halusos Carion, Batanon, Buutan ug Malagaron, City Councilor of the Pitan City, Chairman, Committee on Tourism, Committee on Labor, Committee on Child Welfare and Development. Honorable Angel Halusos Carion, Batanon, Buutan ug Malagaron, City Councilor of the Pitan City.
RPN Radio Philippines Network. DXKD Dipolo Radio Ronda. Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb. Let's go up close and personal with Vice Presidential Aspirant and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Senator, makailang ulit niyo pong sinabi ang kalaban COVID, gutom at kahirapan. If you win as Vice President, and in specifics, what's the first thing you're going to do?
You know, we will expand all the interventions of Vice President Lenny in her office. Solid support for our frontliners in terms of PPEs. Ginawa niya yan. Hanap buhay sa gitna ng pandemya, ginagawa niya yan. Yung telekonsulta, dahil natatakot ang ating mga kababayan pumunta sa ospital, hindi alam kung saan pupunta, mayroong telekonsulta si Vice President na libo-libo na ang natutulungan na bibigyan ng adviso at advice. Yung pagbigay ng trabaho sa mga mananahi, di ba? Para sila ang gumagawa ng PPEs. Of course, dapat international standards. So all these interventions that she has been doing already for the last year, almost 2 years, yung ayuda, yung food packs na nade-deliver, lahat yan ay palaliwigin pa natin. And of course, solid contact tracing, solid testing, solid isolation ang kinakailangan gawin. And that's what we're going to do para talunin natin ang COVID. And of course, the economic...
Sorry, sir. When you talk about, this is very important, when you talk about solid contact tracing and solid testing, okay, while we've had different SARS for testing, tracing, treatment, etc., kayo ho ba nakikita ninyo na posible yung tinatawag na free mass testing? Of course, when we say mass testing, let's underscore the fact that hindi po every single Filipino, but of course, siya po si first degree, second degree, and third degree. Nakikita niyo ho ba na under a Lenny Kiko team-up, magkakaroon po ng free mass testing?
Well, we will endorse that because that's our position from day one, na dapat libre ang testing at gamitin yung pondo ng masino. Kasi ang nangyari dito, free testing yung ating panawagan. Ang nangyari, yung testing kits, kalahating bilyon ang nag-expire while in storage. So talagang mayroong problema yung COVID response. Ayusin natin yung COVID response. Matiyak na tama ang management ng buong effort. Dahil talagang nakita natin matindi ang naging kakulangan. So yes, I support mass testing that should be free and shouldered by the government, as is the case for vaccination. Dahil pag wala tayong ang vaccination libre, dapat ang testing din libre. Dahil yan ang effective way of really managing, arresting. Alam natin kung sino ang positibo para ma-isolate kaagad para hindi na kumalat ito. So kasama yan sa ating imumungkahi. But I have to say, this is my personal view at this point. I will have to bring it up with our our Vice President because we work as a team.
Opo. Okay. Understandable. And kayo ho ay alam naman po natin perennial problem yung siguro yung kinakaharap ng mga magsasaka natin. Ano po? Kumbaga, sila po yung gumagawa ng pinakamahirap na trabaho, yet sila po yung may maliit na kinikita. Once and for all, sir, what really can be done to help uplift the lives of our farmers?
Sorry, this is about which
Sa
sector?
mga magsasaka po, the farmers.
Oh yes. Well, as ang naging karanasan ng ibang bansa, pagka sinuportahan mo at inalalayan mo ang ating mga magsasaka at mangingisda, dadami ang kanilang ani. Pag dumami ang kanilang ani, tataas ang supply ng pagkain, bababa ang presyo ng pagkain. Magiging mura na at abot kaya ang pagkain. Ma-address na ang gutom. Pinakamalaki sa gastusin lalo na ng mahihirap ay pagkain. Kapag bumagsak ang presyo ng pagkain, yung mga mahihirap ang pinaka makikinabang. Magkakaroon na talagang maayos na at masustansyang pagkain, lalo na ang mga kabataan, yung ating mga anak, na ma-address yung mga problema ng kalusugan. So really, supporting our farmers will provide better yields, mas mataas ang ani, mataas ang kita nila, pero bababa naman ang presyo ng pagkain. At mawawala na ang gutom. That is actually what food security is all about. Addressing hunger, addressing lack of supply. And by supporting your farmers and fisher folk, you're actually addressing in the long run yung gutom at kahirapan.
As a last question, Senator, should you win as Vice President, ano po ang cabinet post na nararapat para sa inyo?
I'm sorry, should I win? What?
The Vice Presidency. What cabinet post do you think is most suited for you?
That's up to the win. Well, if we win and Vice President Lenny wins, I leave it up to her. And I trust she will make the right decision for our country. So that's her. That question should be raised and addressed to her, not me.
I do believe that, sir. But what my question is, what do you think is most suited for you, where you will excel?
Bahala. I will defer to the Vice President. Ayaw kong pangunahan ang magiging desisyon niya kung sakaling kami masuportahan ng kababayan natin at manalo.
Okay. Senator Kiko Pangilinan, sir, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras and good luck to you.
Maraming salamat, Pinky, at magandang araw sa kanilang lahat. Please stay safe. Hindi pa tapos ang COVID. Mag-ingat tayong lahat para ligtas tayo dito sa problemang ito. Pagtulong-tulungan lang natin. At alam ko, sabi ko nga doon sa ating talumpati, huhugot tayo ng tapang at lakas mula sa isa't isa. At sa pamamagitan ng ating damayan, malalagpasan din natin itong problema at pagsubok na ito. Maraming salamat, Pinky, at magandang araw sa kanilang lahat.
Thank you also, sir, and thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.
Kini ang RPN Dex Kini Radio Ronda 1053 kHz.
Anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, no? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
Sa panahon ng pandemyang ito, mahalagang manatili tayong physically at mentally healthy. Kung ikaw ay may karamdaman ng takot, pagkabahala at pangamba, kausapin natin ang ating mga mahal sa buhay at ituon natin ang ating atensyon sa mga bagay na makatutulong sa ating kalusugan. Maaari ring sumangguni sa 1553-0917-899 Usap 8727 o 027989. Usap 8727. Mental health ay pangalagaan. Tara, usap tayo, kaibigan.
RPN Dex Kini Radio Ronda 1053 kHz.
She is seeking re-election to the Senate for a second term. Senator Risa Ontiveros has become one of the most vocal opposition lawmakers in the upper chamber. Ontiveros is running under the banner of Akbayan and a guest candidate of Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Joining us now live on Up Close is Senator Ontiveros. Senator Risa, thank you so much for joining us on this program. The Philippines is one of the weakest, if not the weakest country in fighting COVID. How should this health crisis be managed differently?
Oh my gosh, 180 degrees differently, Rico. We've been saying from the first days, test, trace, isolate or quarantine and treat, plus now we are saying vaccinate. So kailangan kong sabihin, step up, no? The government's pandemic response, despite our country being the largest borrower of loans for COVID response, bakit tayo yung magiging pinakahuli sa region natin in terms of recovering our national health and as well the health of our economy? So it's a very painful situation we are in right now, Rico, and it's on the minds, top of mind of all Filipinos looking at a possible change next year. We have to focus on health kasi next year, 2022, will be year 3 of the pandemic. We have to focus on the economy kasi nga we will still be within a few years at least of slow and very painful and like I mentioned, laggard economic recovery. And I have to say, Rico, in this very hot season of Pharmaly and other long-standing corruption issues, I think top of mind of citizens will be corruption.
Right.
Checking it, fiscalizing it, and eventually eliminating it.
Definitely, Pharmaly will be front and center, no? When candidates talk about their platforms and how to resolve the corruption issue. What do you think is next for this investigation, Senator Risa? In a show of force, you have the Philippine College of Physicians along with several other medical societies expressing outrage over President Duterte's memorandum stopping executive officials from appearing in the Senate's ongoing investigation into the alleged corruption in his administration's pandemic response. Do you think the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee will really get to the bottom of it?
We intend to, Rico, at kami po ay nabubuhayan lalo ng loob, nagpapasalamat dun sa ating healthcare workers, health professionals for that stunning, unprecedented statement. I think everything has just piled up in the last 1.5 years. The sufferings on the health front, the sufferings on the economic front, again with a very poor economic pandemic response of our government, especially on behalf of poor families at yung ating mga MSMEs na yung ating mga doktor at iba pang health professional ay hindi na talaga napigilang magsalita, lalo na idagdag yung issue ng korupsyon sa gitna pa ng pandemya. So moving forward in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, our chairman, Sen Dick, has already begun to start drafting our committee report, but more and more angles to this sordid story keep emerging. Rico, more characters in this cast. I think we will have a very solid committee report, solid findings, and very strong recommendations of how to turn the tide in terms of our pandemic response, especially in the matters of our healthcare workers, in the matter of clean and not graft and corruption-laden expenditures of limited pandemic funds that should really be used to address the health and the economic crises facing our people.
A big issue right now, Senator Risa, is this provision of substitution in the Omnibus Election Code. And some of your Senate colleagues are saying candidate substitution by political parties has been abused. What should be done, in your opinion?
Well, I'm glad that Senate President, for one, has spoken up about that. We have only, but still, 8 months left in this 18th Congress. At alam naman natin, Rico, that our track record in the country in terms of electoral reform legislation could still certainly be added to. At isa na yan, yung posibleng pag-revisit, posibleng pag-amyenda ng probisyong iyan sa ating Omnibus Election Code. Siyempre, importante rin, Rico, to continue trying to build a real political party system here in the country. Kasunod nung mga naunang electoral reforms tulad ng party list law, yung election automation, yung overseas absentee voting. I think we could also work on additional electoral reforms like campaign finance reform and other proposed reforms to the political party system para talagang lalo na ngayong panahon ng pandemya at papasok na naman tayo sa isang general election year, that not only the parties, not only the candidates, but citizens as well, all voters will be more enabled to focus on the issues that matter going into year 2022 na gaya ng binanggit ko nga kanina, palagay ko front and center talaga kalusugan, ekonomiya at korupsyon.
You have authored, Senator, a historic bill seeking to raise the age of sexual consent to 16-year-olds from the current 12 to protect children from sexual exploitation and abuse. Will this ever become law before your term ends?
Oh, I'm certainly hoping so, Rico. Bastado na siya on third and final reading in both the Senate and the House. In fact, we are beginning our bicameral conference committee meetings tomorrow. And like I mentioned earlier, may 8 buwan pa sa loob ng kongresong ito, sa loob ng administrasyong ito. This is a bill that I think no one can quarrel with. Ano po, yung itaas yung napakababa nating age of consent. Ngayon, 12 lang. It's the lowest in our region, Rico, one of the lowest in the world. At itaas natin, palakasin ng proteksyon sa ating mga anak, sa ating mga bata laban sa statutory rape in the interest of protecting the best interests of the child, fulfilling our obligations under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children, while continuing to recognize the evolving capacities of young people. So, pwedeng pirmahan yan ni Presidente. At worst, he could let it lapse into law, pero hindi ko ma-imagine any scenario na i-veto nila ito. This is what the Senate calls a happy bill. Kami po sa minority at yung mga kasama namin sa majority united to support the passage of this bill, and I believe it also had the widest support in the House.
You mentioned earlier the economy is one of the main issues in these elections. More than 4 million Filipinos, Senator Risa, or even more. I mean, those who are not included in the statistics have lost their jobs. A lot of micro, small enterprises have shut down, are out of business. The economy is still weak and faces a long road to recovery. If you become a senator for a second term, can you give us specific legislation or initiatives that you will put on the table to jumpstart the economy and create jobs for our kababayans?
I certainly can, Rico. On the heels of what we're trying to pass now as an even more health and economic responsive national budget for year 2022, kung may kahit anong pag-asa pa para sa isang Bayanihan 3. On the heels of that, kapag makapagtrabaho ulit ako sa Senado sa susunod, I will continue to work on bills like for Filipinos in the informal economy, maternity benefits for pregnant workers in the informal sector, benefits for our workers in the gig economy. Buhay na po ito, Rico, before the pandemic, and even more so with the lockdowns, with everybody working and studying online. Our delivery riders, even if they wish, the majority of them wish to preserve their status not as employees but as freelancers holding their own time, making their own decisions about which jobs they will take. Still, benefits for them as working people under the law. For our overseas Filipino workers, Rico, especially as the global economy is only beginning to really get back on its feet in a still not completely designed new and better economic normal, one of the bills I'd like to continue working on, unless we can happily pass it in this 18th Congress, the Magna Carta of Seafarers for our mga marino, among many other economic measures, Rico, that I believe the next Congress can continue to work on in terms of our legacy in this 18th Congress, and what I hope the next administration will do much better than the current administration in terms of protecting Filipino families, lalo na yung mga mahihirap na pamilya, in terms of protecting yung ating mga micro, small, and medium enterprises from the worst effects of this pandemic and recession.
And Senator Risa, and make sure that with this billions of pesos in funding, there is transparency and accountability, and that the funds are accounted for and it goes to the proper sectors and used in the right way.
Exactly. That is what rankles, Rico, about the issues we are investigating and how to unearth the truth about following the COA audit report of the Department of Health's expenditures last year, 2020, kung bakit may 42 billion pesos transferred by DOH to the PSDBM without proper documentation, and how apparently that 42B has been dipped into to favor this small, new, undercapitalized company to the detriment, Rico, sa mga Pilipinong kumpanya na nag-repurpose to meet Filipinos' pandemic needs. Yung mga manggagawa nila na handang-handang gawin ang kanilang tungkulin sa ating bayan. And apparently, with a generous dose of influence peddling by the former presidential economic advisor Michael Yang, and therefore even the president's own role in this whole fiasco is still not completely accounted for. So definitely, with on the heels of our disappointment about how the administration has misused the funds appropriated by Congress as requested by the executive in Bayanihan 1, Bayanihan 2, the General Appropriations Acts or national budgets. Well, moving forward, Rico, in year 2022, we have to do much better on behalf of our suffering people, kasi hindi talaga katanggap-tanggap na yung mga pondong galing sa buwis ng mamamayan, maayos na inappropriate ng ating Kongreso, hiningi ng executive, ay hindi gamitin optimally, maximally, to help our people recover our physical health, to help our economy recover its health, and again generate more jobs, again get more enterprises and businesses back on their feet, and set us back on the road that we were more than half a decade ago, and especially a year and a half ago, towards being one of the more developed economies in Asia, towards middle income status on the global stage.
And we will continue our discussion with Senator Risa Ontiveros after this short break on The Final Word.
Kini ang RPN Dex Kini Radio Runda 1053 kHz.
Oh, anyari sa'yo? Ba't nakasimangot ka? Alam ko na. Masakit ang katawan mo, no? Sa sobrang trabaho? O di kaya masakit ang ulo sa sobrang stress? Break ka muna. Hinga ng malalim at imasahe ang ulo mo gamit ang Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Ako rin ganun eh. Kaya pag mataas ang tensyon sa trabaho, mag-Herbalaya break ka muna.
Herbalaya Liniment Oil. Amoy na kaaya-aya. Sa bawat pahid ay ginhawa.
Dapitan City Councilor Jezebel Bing Balisado, konsihal sa Dakbayan sa Dapitan nga dali duulon og maabibihon sa iyang mga katawhan. Konsihal Bing Balisado maluluyon og matinabangon sa tanang higayon. Konsihal Bing Balisado sa Dakbayan sa Dapitan.
RPN Dex Kini Radio Runda 1053 kHz.
Glad you're staying with us on the final word on CNN Philippines. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rico Hizon, and we continue our discussion now up close with Senator Risa Ontiveros. Senator Risa, we have 2 minutes left in our interview, and I would like you to answer these 6 questions with just a yes or a no. All right?
Okay.
First question.
All right.
Do you favor easier public access to the statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth of the President, Vice President, and members of Congress?
Yes.
Do you support lifting foreign ownership limits in the Constitution?
No.
Do you favor the reimposition of the death penalty for drug-related crimes?
No.
Should a sitting president be allowed to run for vice president in the next election?
No.
Do you favor resuming peace talks with the communist rebels?
Yes.
And should the country be more aggressive in protecting its maritime interests in the West Philippine Sea?
Oh, yes.
Your final word, Senator Risa Ontiveros, to the Filipino people.
Salamat, Rico. Sa mga kababayan namin at mga kapwa-botante, sana po moving forward beyond the sufferings of this pandemic so far, sa ating kalusugan, sa kamatayan na dumalaw sa sobrang daming pamilyang Pilipino, sa kawalan ng trabaho at hanap buhay, sa gutom na pinagdudusahan ng ating mga kababayan. Sana po moving forward, regardless of who we voted for in 2016, lahat po tayo nagdurusa. Sana po moving forward into 2022, mabawi natin ulit yung dati nating mas malawak na pagkakaisa. Pagtulong-tulungan po nating gumaling sa COVID-19 pandemic na ito. Pagtulong-tulungan po nating guminhawa muli. Bawasan talaga ng mahigit ang kahirapan na lalong dumami dito sa ating lipunan. At pagkaisahin natin yung insistence natin sa malinis na paggogobyerno at malinis na paggastos ng ating gobyerno sa perang galing sa ating pagod at galing sa ating buwis. Palagay ko po ay muli, regardless of sino ang mga binoto natin noong 2016, kaya pa nating magbuo ng mas malawak na pagkakaisa para sa ganyang mga pangarap. Isang new and better normal para sa ating lipunan sa 2022. Pagtulungan po natin iyon.
Senator Risa Ontiveros, thank you so much for joining us on Up Close on the Final Word.
Kini ang RPN